Right, ladies and gentlemen, I will continue with, this is the nice bit, this is the juicy bit now. The juicy bit that comes. We've talked about the Dillingtons. After them, through inheritance, one thing and another, via a nephew, through General Bockland, and it rests upon his grandson, Maurice George Bissett. Now, Bissett is living at Knighton Gorges. He is in the same military regiment as Richard Worsley from Appuldurcan House. And Richard Worsley is married to Lady Seymour Worsley. Richard Worsley married his wife for her money. There was no love there, never. The fact that she was a very pretty girl was an added bonus. Unfortunately for Richard Worsley, she was also a nymphomaniac. And she loved her men. And boy, did she have her men. Obviously, a liaison struck up between Bissett and Richard Worsley. And when Seymour Worsley saw Maurice George Bissett, she thought, wow, what a dashing young soldier. I'm going to have some of that. Now, we have taken a psychic artist up on the site that we're going on, and he has seen Bissett and seen Seymour Worsley. This is his impressions of Bissett. Now, Sarah's impression of Bissett was, wow, he's just like Clark Gable, am I right? Just like, he was dashing, very handsome, and you can see a bit of a Clark Gable in there, can't you, really? Almost, with his whiskers and his moustache and his...
There when a guy called Simon, and we actually sat up on the site for 3 hours, and Simon and I were actually sat together whilst we drew that, and I hadn't described him to Simon until after we'd drawn it, and didn't show us the pictures until after we'd finished, so it's quite interesting.
And then he drew Seymour Worsley, and that is his drawing of Seymour Worsley. Now, she was quite a petite little thing. As I say, she loved her men, and she loved her dresses. She always had them handmade, the most expensive dresses. The Paris fashions were her fashions. She loved her jewellery. She was the forerunner of Anne Summers. All her underwear, she had the seamstress sew in little seed pearls round the edges of her underwear to amuse the gentlemen when they were undressing her. Isn't that fun? She rode a horse like a man. All the ladies should be riding side saddle. She wanted to ride, and always did ride, like a man. She didn't care much for polite society. She loved humiliating her husband, and did so on many occasions. Poor Richard Worsley was a bit of a struggling sort of guy. He was bullied by his father, who was an alcoholic. He was burdened with Appuldurcan House because they kept on running out of money while they were trying to construct it all the time. And that was why he married Seymour Worsley, so that they could continue the building of the big house, as it were. She teased him enormously. If they were going to a function at Appuldurcan House, throwing some sort of ball or whatever, she would be the last to come down the stairs. She would wear some outrageous gown, deliberately, knowing that the other women in the ballroom would be going, just look at her, what does she think? How dare she wear things like that? And she thought, I love it, I love it. And she would walk straight up to her latest beau, ignore her husband, and sort of flirt with him in front of her husband. She liked to smoke cigars, drink brandy, and gamble. So at the end of the dinner parties, when the ladies went for their tea and their nice little chats, she'd rather be with the men playing the snooker, smoking the cigars, and drinking the brandy. She had 2 children, one by her husband and one by Bissett. Richard Worsley looked after the second child, knowing it was not his, but he did look after it. And even through her pregnancies, she would ride astride the horse, which again was really very, very much frowned upon. They went round as a threesome. Everywhere they went as a threesome. And everyone knew what was going on, and nobody sort of made any comments. And that was fine. Richard Worsley was quite happy with all of that until in 1781 the couple eloped. Back she went to Knighton Gorges with Bissett, leaving everything. And when she was ensconced in Knighton Gorges, she sent her housemaid back to Appledurcan House for her gowns, her jewellery and her money. And Richard Worsley denied her everything. She literally walked out in the dress she was standing in. And it was known that he knew, Richard Worsley knew, that this would hurt her more than anything, for she loved her gowns and she loved her jewellery, and he did it out of sheer spite. Well, Worsley decided he would sue Bissett for £20,000. That's something like an equivalent of £20 million in today's terms. So down in London, the court case comes up. Oh, you can imagine the Sun, the News and the World of those days were having a heyday. Apparently, the suers, Worsley and his men, called upon 42 men to take the witness stand and admit that they were lovers, and 2 turned up. She was put on the stand, Seymour Worsley was put on the stand, and she admitted to 37 lovers. So that's not bad, is it, really? Pretty good going. No one came out of this with any grace or dignity whatsoever. The papers had a heyday, there were cartoons of the time, and at the end of the court case, Lord Mansfield, who was the presiding judge, turned to the jury and asked whether Sir Richard had been privy to the prostitution of his wife. And they obviously presumed that he was. So they awarded him, or the judge awarded him, 1 shilling. And that's what he got, 1 shilling. The couple went back to Knighton Gorges. Worsley went back to Appledurcan. He couldn't face society, so he went on a world tour. But all was not well with Bissett and Seymour Worsley. For Bissett's father was a clergyman, and he had brought up Bissett in a correct way, and he wanted Seymour Worsley to divorce her husband and marry him. And that was the last thing she wanted. So this caused a rub between the two of them, and eventually it all went sour, and she left with nothing at all. And she ended up in France, wandering around, trying to find some French count to support her. Bissett, in the meantime, had now been given the last present that Seymour Worsley gave to him, which was syphilis. So along comes Bissett's daughter, Jane. "Daddy," she says, because they spoke like that in those days, "Daddy, I am to wed." "Wonderful," said Bissett. "Who is the young gentleman?" "My cousin, the Reverend Fenwick." "What? You can't marry your cousin, the Reverend Fenwick. He is a penniless parson." By now, Bissett was going a bit funny in the head. His movements were becoming erratic. He had delusions of grandeur. He expected her to say the Duke of something or the Earl of something. But the Reverend Fenwick, her cousin, a penniless parson? No, 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 you're not going to at all." "Yes, I am, because I love him." Well, he turned to her and said, "If you go ahead and disobey me, you will not inherit anything of mine." Bissett, in the year 1821, was now dying. He wasn't living at Knighton Gorges, he was living up in Scotland. He instructed men to demolish the house when he knew that he was dying. Now, in Gay's book, She reckons it was because of the cost of the house was very demanding. But the other story is that he did it to spite his daughter so that she would not inherit. Whichever is true, we do not know. It was demolished in November 1821, and Bissett died on the 16th of December in 1821, not at the house, but up in, I think it's Scotland, isn't it? Scotland, yeah. And that is the end of rather a sad story. They had so much. They were so young and beautiful, and they had so much. And between them, they messed it all up. But how so often does that happen? Now we're going to, when we finish, I haven't had my pud yet, so I'm going to have my pud. So have a little chat. I've got a couple of engravings of the house here that Gay has brought to show you. These are two engravings of the house. As I say, it was the largest, the oldest and the finest. There are copies of this if you want to purchase one of these. She has copies for a couple of quid, you can purchase them. She has the book on Knighton Gorges here, which she will sell to you and sign if you so wish. And other than that, before we go, I've got a little present for you all. It's a little fluorescent bracelet which you can wear to walk down to the Knighton Gorges so that you don't get run over in the dark. Okay? So enjoy. We're well forward at the moment. It's only 8:20. I had thought we wouldn't be out of here much before 9. But I'm just going to have my pud, have another drink or a coffee if you wish or whatever, and we'll shortly gather ourselves together.